Hey guys, First Regardsman here. Today I'll be talking about leveling in Space Marine 2. The leveling system for this game can be a little confusing for many players, since there are not only class levels but also weapon levels, and there are entirely new features to help you level your character and weapons that were added since the game's initial launch in 2024. In this video, I'm going to cover how leveling your weapons and classes actually works, what prestige ranks are, the fastest XP rates the game has to offer, and what weapons you should prioritize leveling first. The first thing we'll be talking about here are class levels and prestige ranks. There are 25 levels for every class in Space Marine 2. To level your class, you obviously require experience points, and the main purpose of leveling your class is to gain access to new class perks in your perk tree. Now, simply leveling does not grant you immediate access to new perks. You'll have to purchase them with requisition points in your perk tree before you're actually able to equip them. Requisition points are granted by pretty much every activity in the game, and you can also purchase them by using armory data in the Accolade store. Now, after reaching level 25 in a given class, you are granted the opportunity to prestige. Prestiging will reset your class level back to 1 and will also reset your entire perk tree. There are a maximum of 4 prestige ranks per class, and every time you prestige, you will gain a permanent 10% XP boost and are allowed to choose 1 prestige perk out of 7. Any perks that you purchase before prestiging will not be refunded, and you will also have to repurchase them again when you reach the proper level requirement. This sounds worse than it actually is, as the cost of perks is not very expensive, but having to re-level to unlock them can be a bit tedious, since you do lose access to some of the most entertaining builds in the game. The next thing we're going to cover here are the weapon levels. Now, leveling your weapons is a bit more involved than leveling your class, since it requires not only XP but also the armory data resource. Weapons are categorized into 5 tiers, which are the standard issue tier, master crafted tier, artificer tier, relic tier, and of course the heroic tier. Now, heroic weapons function a bit differently from the first 4 weapon tiers, as these are unique variants that are purchased in the Accolade store, and because of this we're going to be talking about heroics more later and focus on the primary 4 weapon tiers first. To progress your weapon tiers, you are required to level the overall XP of your chosen weapon. This is represented by this bar and has 4 increments. Once you reach the required XP for a weapon tier, to actually unlock the next tier of weapon, you have to use an armory data of an equivalent level or above. Armory data is a currency that can be found throughout operation and stratagem maps in set locations, and they are also granted for killing on-map terminus enemies and mission bosses. You are also able to get armory data by completing siege mode, but this is really more of a bonus for reaching higher waves in this mode rather than an efficient way of obtaining it. You can also exchange 3 lower tier armory data to gain one of a higher tier in the Accolade store. So this is how we gain access to higher tiers of weapons, but on top of leveling your overall weapon XP, each variant within a tier has its own XP bar and is purchased with requisition points. Every time you max out a weapon variant, you are granted 1 weapon perk point to use in your weapon's perk tree, and you will also get another weapon perk point when you max out your weapon's overall tier XP bar here as well. Another way of maxing your weapon variants without actually having to level them up with XP is by spending an equivalent or higher tier armory data on a weapon variant instead. This is really useful if you hate playing with a certain weapon defense type, or you gain a new weapon tier before you've maxed out all the weapon variants in a previous tier. This is one of the better quality of life features in the entire game, and got that much better after they added the Accolade store, since you can actually get armory data of different types much more easily now. Now, the final thing I want to mention on leveling your weapons is that if you gain some ridiculous amount of XP for completing a high difficulty mission that would go above the XP you need for the next tier of weapon you're using, this XP does not transfer over to the next tier, and you will have to purchase that tier, then level it up in the same way as the previous one. Your weapon XP is also shared with class XP, so you're able to level both simultaneously. Now that we've explained how the first 4 weapon tiers and levels work, let's go back and talk about heroic weapon variants. Unlike the other 4 tiers, these do not have any level requirement or mastery to them at all. All you have to do is purchase one in the Accolade store, and they'll be available for you to use. This makes them a pretty useful tool for leveling your overall weapon tiers, as they have relic level stats and can be used at level 1. Though you do need the required accolades and will still have to master the other weapon variants to get maximum perk points in your perk tree. But speaking of weapon variants, which weapons should you prioritize while leveling up your classes? In Space Marine 2, if the same weapon is usable by multiple classes, it will share progression across all of them. This means that weapons like the bolt pistol and heavy bolt pistol are incredibly valuable to max out first, as they are available on every single class. This makes it significantly easier to take an underlevel primary into slightly higher difficulties for leveling and not get completely outclassed by the enemies that are there. Other melee weapons like the chainsword and combat knife are also present on multiple classes, and ones that aren't can have their heroic variants purchased for leveling like I mentioned previously. So when you're leveling up, keep in mind what weapons are on which classes, as it will make your life far easier in the long run. So now that we know what weapons we should be prioritizing to make our leveling experience smoother and how leveling systems actually work for our weapons and classes, it's time to talk about the reason you're probably here, which is how we actually obtain experience and what the fastest ways to accomplish this actually are. Space Marine 2 has multiple ways to level your character, but the first of these options, and the one I think that most players should start on, is Operations. The amount of XP you get in Operations is dependent on multiple factors such as difficulty, whether or not you picked up the on-map gene seed, which we'll get into more later, and your team's extermination rank. The difficulty is pretty self-explanatory. The higher difficulty you pick, the more XP it will give you, with absolute difficulty granting you the highest total XP available to Operations. The Stratagems game mode will also grant you the same amount of XP as Operations for the respective modes, with normal difficulty being based on substantial and hard difficulty being based on absolute. Now, as you reach certain checkpoints in an operation or stratagem, you will progressively get XP even if you fail the mission. This is split into 5 different parts that grant about 10% of the total mission XP the further you progress, with the full payout being when you know, actually complete the mission. Throughout an operation mission, you can also find a gene seed pickup, and this will grant you an additional 30% XP, but if you die after you pick up the gene seed, it will be lost forever, and you will fail the Emperor, and everyone in your lobby will flame you. Your team's extermination rank that I mentioned briefly is based on how many enemies you kill throughout the mission. This functions as a multiplier to your XP. It's split into 3 ranks, which are C, B, and A, so playing through a mission properly is encouraged. As for which operations are the fastest for leveling, you really can't go wrong with the classic Decapitation. This is arguably the easiest mission in the entire game, as the Hive Tyrant is a boss the majority of the player base knows how to fight at this point, since it's been available since the launch, on top of being one of the shortest missions available. Tyranids are also generally easier to fight than Chaos for most players, and even Saber has admitted they believe this to be the case, so the majority of players will likely prefer leveling on Tyranid operations, but if you do want to fight Chaos, missions like Vox Liberatus can also be incredibly efficient alongside maps like Obelisk. The actual XP rates you get from completing these will vary between player skill levels and what difficulty you actually select, but my tip for this is play at a difficulty you are comfortable with, as pushing a difficulty far higher than your current weapon and class level can technically level you faster, but only if you actually complete the mission. So if you are somebody that goes on an endless cycle of suffering and rebirth, you're not going to get all that much XP at all, and will just be wasting your time by trying to punch above your weight class. Generally, going through the intended level brackets is a great way to learn the game and also unlock the operation armor requirements, and is what I would personally recommend, though I would suggest that most players are at average difficulty rather than minimal, as the vast majority of players are more than capable of completing this one right off the bat. You can also get a 20% XP buff to any difficulty if you select the quick match, and this is honestly a pretty fun way for you to learn the different operations in the game and avoid burnout, as while rushing XP is definitely an option, it can be incredibly boring and wasn't really the way the game was intended to be played. Now, the final way and fastest way to level up in Space Marine 2 is what I like to call the Heretical XP Truth, which is power leveling on hard siege mode. Before I even get into this method, I want to say this is not for new players, and for many, this will not be the best way to level up, as if you die, you will get 0 XP from this, unlike the other game modes. But if you know what you are doing, or you have a team of friends that are willing to do this with you, it is the fastest way to level up your classes and weapons. To do this method, you will play hard siege mode, you will purchase a heavy bot from the requisition store every single wave, as this will dramatically increase your clear speed alongside a single purchase of Cadians if you want, and you will then speedrun the first 5 waves of hard siege mode, and upon completing the final wave, you'll return to the battle barge and then rinse and repeat until you've achieved Nirvana. The reason this method is so fast is that siege mode will give you around 4,000 XP depending on your prestige level, while only taking around 15 minutes to complete, which is generally faster than absolute operations overall, and technically easier as well. Since hard siege mode is based on lethal difficulty and enemies don't start getting serious buffs until post wave 15, this is actually a very safe way to solo level, as there is no risk of losing the gene seed since they don't actually exist in this mode at all, and you will also have access to Guardian Relics guaranteed on top of siege specific bots and your standard bot teammates. That being said, you will still get absolutely cooked if you are new, so do not do this unless you're an experienced player, and also don't do this in a public match-made game. There is technically no level gate in the matchmaking right now, but that could definitely change in the future, and it's also just kind of a dick move to join a game and leave after level 5 in public matches. If you really do want to play this at a lower level, you can use an LFG to find other players, either in the official Discord or my community Discord. Space Marine 2's community is pretty friendly, it doesn't usually randomly boot people, and many players are completely willing to help new players level purely for the love of the game. You will also get more of your ordeals done when starting out by actually playing the operations, so like I said previously, playing these is usually the best idea for new players and it's honestly the most fun. Not everything in a game like this is about power leveling, those options do exist for players who want them, but sometimes about the journey, not the destination, especially since a lot of this game's content is in the leveling experience. That's pretty much everything I had to say about leveling in this video. Hopefully you now have a better understanding of how class levels and weapon leveling systems in this game actually work. I also want to say a special thank you to my channel members, as your support helps me make guides like this, and if you want to catch me live to ask me questions about the game or just come hang out, you can find me here on YouTube or on Twitch with a link in the description below alongside a link to my community Discord. And as always, if you like content like this, subscribe for more. Thanks for watching, take it easy, bye.